I always knew this day would come. Crash Boom Bang is an infamous game, particularly among fans of the Crash series. But even though I call myself a fan of the series, I haven't properly played this game. In a lot of ways, my experience with this game was very similar to my experience with Crash Bash. I discovered it, played it for about 15 minutes, and then turned it off and never touched it again. I played Boom Bang so long ago that I can't even remember anything about it, other than the fact that it's a party game. I've been reviewing the Crash games one by one, and Boom Bang is next on my list. There's no escaping it now, the time has come to play it for real. Pick a god and pray for me, I have a feeling this is gonna be rough. It only took a single glance at the title screen to immediately regret my decision to do this. Look at this, the game's logo over a white void, while Crash and this knockoff purple pinstripe run around. It's so soulless and boring. When the main menu pops up, there's a background there, why couldn't you use that for the title screen? Bloody hell, listen to me, I haven't even pressed a button. And I'm already complaining. This game's notorious reputation has clearly infected my brain. I think what I need to do is to go into this with an open mind. Ignore what everyone says about this game, and just play it. Only then will I be able to have the true Boom Bang experience. Starting a new game, we get to pick our character. There are 8 options, but 4 of them are blacked out, so unless they're all doing blackface, I'm guessing we can unlock them later. Our 4 options are Crash and Coco, who makes sense, Pura, who's decided to rock some jorts and stand on 2 legs, and also Pinstripe? Why Pinstripe? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Pinstripe, he's a criminally underused character in this series, but he's such an odd choice for a starter playable character when there are so many more fitting options, like, for example, Cortex, you know, the main bad guy. As tempted as I was to play as Pinstripe, I decided to be a basic bitch and go for Crash instead. Even though he looks slightly demonic in this game, I trust him. I felt safe with him. I find it kind of weird that we pick our character before picking a mode. There's a festival mode, adventure mode, and my room, whatever the hell that means. But surely you would pick your character after picking a mode. I'm not certain on this, but I think that means if you want to play as a different character, you need to start another save file. That sounds pretty inconvenient, especially when you consider that there are only 2 save files available. And how does it work when you unlock a character, then delete the save you unlocked them in? Can you no longer play as that character? How does that work? Am I missing something? I probably shouldn't be thinking about second save files at this point. I haven't even started my first one. We're gonna go with adventure mode, that seems to be the logical thing to do at this stage. The adventure mode kicks off with some story. The knockoff purple pinstripe from earlier is planning a scheme to get his hands on the super big power crystal, which has the power to grant its master a single wish. You know what I would wish for? The opportunity to play a better game. The Viscount, that's his name by the way, has not been able to get his hands on it, so he invites Crash and company to compete in the World Cannonball Race, which promises a prize of $100 million. And nobody questions it, not even me. I'm too busy trying to figure out who is talking. The game doesn't tell you, it just shows the dialogue. Is Coco the one who says it's her lucky break? Or was it Aku Aku? Usually it's pretty obvious who's talking, but when you're in a situation when there is more than one character on screen, who knows what's going on? Look at this line. Sounds like a movie. Does anyone in the audience want to guess which of the 6 characters on screen is saying this? As a story premise for a party game on the DS, it's fine, but before your brain even has time to register what's going on, the game begins with stage 1, so we're just going to forget about that and play the game. With the camera panning across the map, my initial thought is that this game is a Mario Party ripoff. On turn 1, I tried to familiarize myself with how the game works. I was encouraged to have a look at my items and use them to help me win. But as I tried to figure out what the items did, the game started a 5-second countdown and forced me to take my turn and roll the dice before I could even look at all the items. Cheers game. All players move at the same time, which is pretty strange. I was challenged to a minigame, but it involved using the microphone. Unfortunately, I didn't have a button mapped to my controller for microphone inputs in my emulate. My lungs didn't have any air in them at the time, so I couldn't use the microphone. So I lost. Badly. But I still got some points for it, so that's good at least. Turn 2, I managed to figure out how to use the items, but I unknowingly used a bad item on myself, which caused me to only move 1 square. But the square I landed on gave me 1,000 points, which is how much Pinstripe got for winning that minigame from the first turn, and that put me in the lead. After a few more turns, I developed my first impressions of this game, and I understood what the game was about. Sort of. The stage had a goal, be the first to reach the end of the map, so I kept rolling dice and using items and playing minigames, earning points as I went. That seemed to be what was going on, but I was a bit confused. If the goal is to reach the end of the map, what are the points for? Does winning the minigames even matter? You don't move extra spaces if you win, you just earn more points than your opponents. If you're the first to reach the end, you've won, right? Wouldn't that make the minigames irrelevant? It's really strange. I reached the finish line first, so I thought I was the winner. But when I reached the finish line, it said that the player with the most points wins. But because I was the one who reached the goal first, I was awarded 5,000 points. So it kinda makes sense. You get there first, you win the 5,000 points, that should be enough to put you in the lead so you win the game. But theoretically, it must be possible that even if you don't reach the finish line first, you still have more points than the player who did. What happens in that scenario? Do you win the game even though you didn't complete the goal of the stage? Well, it turns out yes, because in stage 2, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing. The goal of this stage is not to reach the end, but instead to go around the map and find 4 stone tablets that are hidden under random squares. So really, it's a game of RNG whether or not you land on them, but immediately I wasn't interested in that. I was more interested in those annoying bubble things that the CPU players keep using. They pop up randomly and cover up about a quarter of the screen, and they spam them at every opportunity. They cover so much of the screen and interfere with playing the game. When they all happen at once, you can't even see what you're doing. I tried to make one of my own, but I accidentally deleted it somehow, and the game forced me to take my turn because it was getting sick of waiting for me. So I just spent the whole time rolling dice and playing minigames, not knowing how I was supposed to win. I randomly stumbled upon one of the stone tablets, for which I was awarded 5,000 points, and it happened to be the last one because the CPUs picked up the other 3. So all of a sudden the game was over. Playing stage 2 caused me to notice that this game is filled to the brim with all sorts of problems and bad decisions, and it's where I truly realized that Crash Boom Bang is a fucking disaster. I don't even know where to start. I guess I'll start with the stages themselves. The actual layout of them is fine, it's a standard dice and board sort of deal, and it's kinda hard to fuck that up. They even have submaps, which is kinda cool and makes them more dynamic. But the way you actually win is dumb. Each stage has a goal, but completing the goal doesn't actually matter. All you need to win is more points than the other players, and that's really easy to do. Winning minigames earns you points, landing on certain squares earns you points, completing the stage's goal does offer a hefty amount of points, but it usually isn't needed, and most of the stage's goals are based on landing on random squares anyway, so it's out of your control. Even if another player clears the stage, you will still win as long as you have more points than them. I'd say it's only ever helpful to clear the goal in the first stage, because everyone starts on the same amount of points. But your points carry over through each stage. I won stage 1, and because of that I had a lead of 2,200 points over second place at the beginning of stage 2, and that lead just kept snowballing. Even though in the following stages I barely contributed to completing the goal, I just kept amassing more and more points. By the end of the final stage, I had an unassailable lead of 25,000 points over second place, and I wasn't even trying. I didn't even win that stage. Pinstripe got to the end first, but I was miles ahead of him in terms of points, so it didn't matter. There was no threat. I was never going to lose. Because my victory was never in jeopardy, I had to try and find enjoyment in the proper gameplay, and that was pretty hard to do. The boards themselves weren't especially interesting gameplay-wise. I'd hardly call rolling dice and moving around a board gameplay anyway, so I had to turn to the minigames, and fuck me. Excluding the first minigame I played, which involved the microphone, every single minigame in Crash Boom Bang is some awful touchscreen garbage. Touch the screen to make the horse go faster. Touch the screen to catch the Wumpa Fruit. Touch the screen to move your character and put this car together. Touch the screen to pick a card. Touch the screen to roll the atmosphere around. Touch the screen to hate every second of your fucking life. All of these minigames are incredibly dull and boring, and I mean all of them. There wasn't a single one that I even somewhat enjoyed participating in. They weren't challenging or interesting. I just didn't care about them. They were so bad. Even the minigame that ripped off Crash Ball from Bash sucked ass because there was a worse version of it that used touch controls. And look, I get that the appeal of the Nintendo DS was the touchscreen. But do you know what else the DS has? Fucking buttons! How about we use some of them, hey? Maybe if you had some minigames that used buttons, you could have made the game a little more interesting. How's that for an idea? And if you think playing the minigames was bad, wait until you hear about betting on minigames. Sometimes you don't even get to participate in the minigames. Sometimes you're forced to bet on the CPU players and watch them compete against each other. And it's so fucking good. It's brilliant. Take a look at this state-of-the-art gameplay. Bravo! Bra-fucking-vo! I know I gave Crash Fusion a lot of shit because its minigames were awful, but at least that game lets you play them. Don't get me wrong, I was rock hard when I got an up-close display of Crunch's gun show, but let me play the game! Bloody hell! Another thing about the minigames that I don't understand is that each stage has a final minigame that occurs once the goal has been achieved. This minigame involves the 4 players competing against the Viscount, and I just don't understand the point of it. I thought we were meant to be helping the Viscount look for his super big happy magic wonder power crystal. Why is he fighting against us? We're trying to help you. What's also strange is that this whole 4 players versus the Viscount thing pretty much sums up the whole game. You would think that the 4 players would compete against each other, but it doesn't really work like that. Most stages involve collecting 4 key items, and it doesn't matter who collects them. As long as they all get collected, the stage is completed. So you're basically all working together to complete the stage, while also competing against each other for points. This whole thing feels very sloppy and lazily thrown together. Like, did anyone think this through? Am I the only one who's confused by how this game works? What's happening? Maybe I'm just not thinking straight. Maybe I'm losing my mind. There are so many bad things about this game. The stages are alright, but they're pretty uninteresting, and their goals are almost irrelevant. Every single minigame is dull and boring touchscreen dogshit, except for the balloon minigame, which is dull and boring microphone dogshit. Spectating and betting on those minigames is even worse. Those splash effects that pop up constantly are really fucking annoying, and because of how the game is structured, nothing you do actually seems to matter. What I think tipped me over the edge is this game's subtle but noticeable attitude. It has no patience for its players. Whenever I decided to spend time looking at my items, or looking at the map to plan my move, or whenever I was reading something, or simply going through the motions of the game, Crash Boom Bang felt it was necessary to start counting down, as if I was the problem, and if I took too long it would just make a move for me. And you know what? It's fucking rude. At stage 5, I decided that I was not putting up with it anymore. If the game thinks it knows better than I do, it can just play itself. I began stage 5 and just let the game run without pressing a button. I didn't input anything, and sure enough, all of my moves were being taken for me. So, while I was having a hissy fit and letting the game play itself, I decided to pass the time by doing some drawings that I'd like to share with you. The first drawing I did was inspired by handymen. I thought, gosh, handymen are handy, aren't they? I wonder what the handiest handyman would look like. So I drew this. As you can see, he's got all the tools he needs, but he is the handiest handyman because he has the most hands. I then drew this 2-panel comic. It's a magician doing a magic show, and he goes, "Is this your card?" But it's the audience member's credit card, and he's stolen it and is running away, which I thought was funny. These days people pay using their phones, but I like using cards still. Sometimes cash, even if it is a bit dirty. Then I drew a cocktail. As you can see, this person is drinking a cocktail while wearing a cocktail. So that's pretty cool. I then drew this. I'm not really sure what this was meant to be. This is the point where I sort of blacked out. We've got Trunky, an elephant distinguishable by its unusually rectangular feet. Then I had this idea for a tattoo. I thought it would be funny for someone to have an arse tattoo where each cheek is one of the pearly gates, like the gate to heaven, which is guarded by an angel. The angel is on the back because, of course, the angel always has your back. Then Mission Impossible came to mind. It's a movie I've never seen, but I always found the title to be a bit negative. You know, Mission Impossible. It's impossible to do this mission. And I didn't like that, so I devised Mission Possible. It's a secret agent taking a lollipop from a baby. As you can see, I've labeled the secret agent and the baby with a lollipop, and also label, in case you didn't know what that was. And finally, we have Smooth Brenda. She's a bit silly. She's put her dress on upside down. I like to think that she enjoys hockey and steak Diane. Oh, what's that? The game has stopped playing itself? Ah, of course. No countdown for the betting rounds. It's good to know that this game has morals. Crash Boom Bang does its absolute best to make sure that kids are subjected to the concept of gambling as much as possible. What a hero! I mustered up enough willpower to carry on playing through this game to the end, and Jesus Christ, what a waste of time. It just really isn't worth playing. The only redeeming quality I can think of is the presentation. I don't want to give it too much credit because there are a lot of games that are much better presented than this one, but for what Crash Boom Bang is, it wasn't that bad. The character models aren't great, but the visuals generally are alright by DS standards. Generic maybe, but nothing jumped out at me as being particularly ugly. The music was also pretty okay. It was also very generic, and that drum song that plays during the minigame results screen will probably haunt my dreams for the rest of my life, but the songs generally weren't that bad either. This was not an ugly game in terms of presentation. The ugliness comes from its gameplay. Crash Boom Bang is bad. Really bad. I think it's gotta be the worst Crash game of them all. Even Crash Fusion, as bad as it was, at least had a couple of good things going for it. This game? Nah, it's a fucking disaster. The story was fine. I personally had no interest in the Viscount or his super big happy magic wonder miracle heaven sparkle tingly bum bum power crystal, but for a party game on DS, it was passable. The presentation was also passable. It was alright. A bit generic, but inoffensive. But the gameplay? My god. The stages are alright layout-wise, but the way they function just stripped any and all competition intention out of the game. Because the game carries your score throughout the entire adventure mode, I quickly took the lead and almost never lost it, to the point where it was basically impossible for me to lose. The stage's goals are often based on RNG, so you can only complete the goal accidentally. The items do bugger all except for the ones that let you change costume, which I liked, and I hate that the CPUs are allowed to piss me off with their pop-up things that block my view. The mini-games, which should be the main selling point of a party game, are extremely dull and boring and are almost exclusively touch-control garbage, and the fact that the game can play itself just goes to show how little thought went into it. When the only part of the game you're required to contribute to is gambling, I mean, it speaks for itself. Crash Boom Bang is a terrible, terrible game. Upon beating the game, you unlock the option to play again in hard mode. But I think I'm gonna pass. Playing Crash Boom Bang was hard enough already.